Hey everyone, thank you for joining. Start with a quick introduction and go what we are to talk about today, right? My name is Tamal. I'm a senior product manager working with Project 44, which is a supply chain visibility company based out of US with one of the wings in Amsterdam where I do work. But I spent most of my life basically in India. And being an Indian, there is sort of have been part of this growing economy and seen this country go from the status of a third world country to a developing country. And have seen the stages of product management grow over the last 5 to 6 years. And I'm trying to blend together the learnings from those experiences here for you to see that what was happening in the Indian economy and what are those sort of trips and tricks and sort of nuances culturally that we can take over probably to the European market as well. Right. So yeah. So who am I? So basically, I've been born and brought up in Calcutta, which is the eastern part of India, and that's where I've spent the most formative years of my life, the first 25 years of my life, including my college, right? And then, as a part of being there, and I've totally in my 7.5 years of working, I've always worked in the tech industry, first as a developer, and then moved to the space of product management after doing my MBA. What I identify myself as a PM/QM, and what that means is that I am a product manager at first. I know this is the one thing that I'm very passionate about. The other thing I'm very passionate about is quizzing, and I host quizzes across the globe for longer than I've been working. So that is that's why I call myself a PM/QM. And I'm a very new expat in Amsterdam. I just moved here in 2022. So you see that the cultural that I'm carrying over from India is what I wanted to carry forward to here as well. And in Amsterdam, you'll probably find me at Luke's, grabbing some coffee, or at Pathe watching the latest movie, or at Stedelijk, which is my favorite museum here. Right. So what I'm going to talk about today is basically the nuances of Indian culture or Indian product management and how that carries over to the thing that we are doing in Europe as well. But to understand that, first you have to start understanding what does the Indian consumer feel like, right? Who are the people that we are talking about, right? And I was thinking about different formats that I could use, but at the end of the day, I could break it down into what we call as big data's 7 Vs. Because at the end of the day, the Indian population is nothing but a data set of almost 1.3 billion, one of the biggest data sets that you can possibly work with. So basically, it's a population of 1.3 billion, so it's massive in volume. It's a massive in variety in terms of culture, in terms of income, in terms of people's likings and preferences. It's a culture that is driven a lot by value in terms of the value in the products that you can provide to them, but value also in terms of the ethics and their value system as well. Right? It's a culture that's also moving very fast. It's looking to be super fast. Its expectations are growing very quickly as well. It wants products to be delivered on the same day. It wants its grocery to be delivered within 9 to 10 minutes now in most of the bigger cities like Bangalore. Right? So, and you have to build products for that. Now, there's also a culture that's built on the concept of low veracity, which basically means they do not trust you very, very easily. It's a culture where trust or loyalty comes very difficult. It's difficult to get as a product manager, right? And also, it's a culture where they're looking for brands that are validated, experiences that are validated, and they don't want to go and explore, something that's not proven, right? And to make it all more difficult is that all of this changes super quickly in the Indian culture, which is a large amount of variability. How it helps you as a product manager? Well, it's easy to find opportunities. When there is 1.3 billion people, you will find something out. Right? It's easy to build differentiated products and differentiated experiences because, again, it's a massive culture. There are a lot of unsolved problems there. It's easy to find talent, and it's easy to build fast with such a large talent base. And it's also super easy to test your products, right? It's a massive market. You build your product, you roll out an A/B very, very quickly, you pilot very, very quickly. So that's where the advantages lie. However, it's equally difficult on different aspects as well. First of all, when you start to build for 1.3 billion people, it's extremely difficult to standardize your products. It's extremely difficult to upsell to these customers because they are not used to paying too high, right? It's as easy as it to find talent. It's very difficult to retain talent in India because the opportunities are fast and coming. It's very difficult to price your product, again, because the amount of money that people can pay varies extremely from people to people. And it's very difficult, like I mentioned, to gain loyalty and trust. in this market overall. Just a second. Yeah. So here, first of all, now I start introducing those cultural nuances that we have as Indians. That first of all, how do you understand user behavior when the behavior is so complex, right? So here I introduce the concept of something called dhanda in India. Now, what is dhanda, right? What do we mean by dhanda when we say it, right? Now, when we talk about Europe and when we talk about understanding our customers, we say that we want to understand, what's their business of the customer, right? Especially in B2B or also in B2C. We try to understand their business. Now, dhanda became some little bit more nuanced word in the Indian culture when it tries to mean three things together. First of all, it's about understanding the business, which is basically what are your customers doing. It also means, like the language that I speak, which is Bengali, it totally changes its meaning and becomes a plan, right? Which it then means that what are your customers trying to do or aiming to do. And finally, it also means some motivation of why they are doing what they are doing, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that if you really want to understand your customers as a product manager, most of the products fail because we try to only focus on understanding where are they now, instead of trying to focus on their motivations or where are they coming from and where do they plan to go in 3 to 5 years of time, right? And products are successful when you understand all these three parts of the business. And it's not only about that. You have to also, as a product manager, balance these two very difficult aspects of balancing the plan, motivation, and needs of your customer with the plan, motivation, and needs of your own company as well. And that becomes the most difficult balance to put in as a product manager, right? You have to also understand their bit, and you have to fit in with the company's position and the bits as well. Right? And the products start to fail when this balance starts to tip into one direction or the other. Right. From my personal experiences, in 2019, I was working in Flipkart, which is India's biggest e-commerce player, and I was building up their trust and safety charter. Trust and safety, as I call, is I always introduce trust and safety as that one department that Elon Musk fucking hates, right? And while building that charter for India is very difficult because it's also also a market which is very prone to fraud and abuse. Right, and I was interviewing a lot of proven fraudsters, people who have never returned, taken credit from the company, never paid back, and tried to understand what's happening, what's the motivation for these people as well, instead of just terming them as a fraudster. And I realized that one of the main sort of motivations that they had, for stealing money or trying to do fraud with a business is just because they felt good in being able to fool a big company, right? It brought in a sense of satisfaction with them. It was never about money. It's never about stealing. It's always about that feeling of goodness that, hey, you are like a big company. You have so many techs in place, but we could still hack you, or we could still steal that 1,000 rupees from you, right? So as me as a product manager, what I take back here is trying to balance the dhanda or the motivations of these two groups, right? I need to understand as my company, what is my risk appetite, right? How much of fraud and abuse can I allow on the platform, right? What is my company's plan, my vision where the company wants to go? And balance it with how much fraud or abuse, is the customer ready to risk in an environment where the risk becomes more and more difficult for them, right? What are those checks and balances that I can put in place where it's no longer that easy to be fraud that big company? And it sort of becomes a question of trying to find the balance and motivation between these two factors. And how do you uncover your users' motivations, right? That becomes the next big questions, right? And basically, what a product manager needs to do is keep on asking why, right? What we get stuck at is the first level of why question, right? If I try to ask you, why are you buying a book? Your first answer would be, yeah, I would like to read it, right? But a poor product management skill will stop there and never ask you the next why question, that why do you need to read a book? Then will come another question, maybe, okay, I will need to talk to my friends about it, right? It's important for me to have a conversation. Then you go one more level deep. So you keep laddering down, trying to find what's the motivation behind what the customer is saying, right? And you probably will understand that, hey, it's important for my friends to perceive me as somebody is intelligent, right? Because that gives me a certain level of social validation. And if you do not come down to that product level of motivational understanding, you end up building a product that's very superficial and probably bound to fail as well. In India, we have the concept, right? in Europe, in the US market, we talk about, the customer is king, the customer is God, right? Or the customer is always right. But even though that's like a 19th century concept that's now come in the Indian Hindu scriptures, we had been talking about, Atiti Devo Bhava, or the guest is always God for the longest of time. It's a teaching that has been in India for almost 2,000 years, which basically means, or even more actually, which basically means the concept of customer empathy comes very natural to this segment, right? It's about understanding that empathy and taking it forward for the products that you build. Right now, if you understand your customer segment, you've got a sense of what's happening, then the next question is, okay, how do I go about building these products as well? Right now, I'll just take one area of how Indians build these products, right? So this is now this is something that you've all seen. Like Zomato is basically Uber Eats for India, right? They basically own also the Uber Eats India operations, right? So they are a delivery company. They do this. They have a tipping experience. Very simple. This is pre-COVID, where they will ask people to just put in money, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees, right, to pay. Now, people used to, India is not really a tipping economy, right? We do not really tip too much, And that's a complaint I get when I, go to restaurants in Europe as well. Right, now what happened during COVID is that people moved away, right? And the big cities basically were still getting a lot of orders, but they were getting orders from repeat customers. And repeat customers, if I'm a repeat customer, it means that you're expecting me to tip every time you deliver. And I'm now getting products delivered almost every day. I do not want to do that, which basically means that as a delivery person, my income is starting to take a hit, right? I'm not earning money. Now there'll be, as a product manager, but what these customers would have still is a massive sense of empathy. And especially during COVID, this empathy was almost very high for people in India, right? But they did not have the means to keep on paying people, right? Or the intention to pay again and again, right? Now, as a product manager, you can go back and try to build an ML model to find what's the right amount to show. What's the right amount to show? What are the user experiences we need to build? But what Zomato did, right, over a weekend, like a very quick project, is just this. What they changed that experience is just added what can the delivery person buy in case you give them that amount of money. So if you're 15 rupees, he can probably get a chocolate at the end of the day. With 20 rupees, he can probably buy himself a cold drink, right? So what it generally means that you immediately target their empathy and try to get your numbers up as well. And look at how simple this hack is, right? It's almost hacky. It takes almost just a day to build, and it's super, super efficient as well. So in India, we call this a jugaad. Right, now what does a jugaad mean? Right now, India, if you look at it, India is famous for its jugaad, right? It's almost a term that gets thrown around a lot. Water bottles being used as shower heads, broken clocks not being thrown away, but using paper to get the time. Right, so India is, and we have a lot of jugaad vehicles as well, which are, built in a very hacky way. But what's a jugaad? It's now actually a recognized management principle, and Oxford Dictionary now describes it as a flexible way of solving your problems with limited resources, right? In Europe, we'll probably call it a quick fix, a workaround, or a hack. But how I see it, right, what makes it different from, a hacking experience is that jugaads need to fulfill three things for me. It has to be frugal. It has to be super cheap, super economic way of doing things done. It has to be non-conventional. It cannot be a hack, that is done to death. And it has to have a very strong sense of empathy towards your customer. Okay, but why does it help us? You always talk about quick fixes never work. Quick fixes are problematic. And this is where I come to one of the most famous things that HRs in your companies will like to tell you, right? All your managers, you've heard, when you work for companies, that, we are a company, where it's okay to fail. You can come and experiment here. It will be okay to fail. And that's an absolute amount of horseshit that they can give you, right? It's never okay to fail as a product manager. It's never okay to fail as a company. No one is okay to take failure. What they mean is okay to fail early, right? And they intentionally skip the early part to make you feel like it's okay to fail. If you spend 6 months on a product and if it fails, that it's not going to come back to you and a performance review, for example, right? So it's okay to fail as long as you fail early. It's sort of like the caveat that companies, intentionally skip. And what happens as a product manager is that you become so obsessed with trying to find the ideal solution to your problems. You get in some form of an analysis mode, which leads to a set of paralysis, which doesn't lead to an actual solution. But what actually works is not always finding the most satisfactory solution, but finding what is known in psychology as the most satisfying solution, which is a solution which satisfies your customer and also suffices. So it satisfies just enough to push it out, right? And sometimes quick product management or all this jugards is around finding a satisfying solution instead of a complete ideal solution. And again, why does it work? Why will a customer buy products that are satisfying? Because that's how exactly the whole world works. Our whole brains are operated in a way to take shortcuts, right? We never look at complete data sets trying to find the right solutions, but our brain naturally puts in hacks to please itself in a certain way. Imagine if you had to look at, the concept of soulmates in relationships exists because we can take shortcuts or heuristics. If we actually go out and try to do, data of every woman if I try to get and find who is the person who is the right for me, I'll never be happy in a happy relationship, and the concept of a happy relationship will be a myth. So our brain is trained to take heuristics or take these logical decisions, right, in shortcuts, and that's what your customers do as well. And it's about you as a product manager, to sometimes rely on satisfying solutions instead of finding the perfect solution. And also you have to remember, as a customer, from the customer's perspective as well, your users or your customers are also jugaadu, or they are also very hacky and know their workarounds as well, right? For example, in 2020, I was trying to solve, again, part of my trust and safety experience, I was trying to find, collusion or people where delivery people and people who are buying products from us were working together to carry out fraud, right? Which basically means the delivery person would know, right, where to deliver the product, right? And they know that the person I'm giving this product to is actually a fraudster, right? And in almost like quarter to 6 months, we were solving for 3 to 4 modus operandi, which kept on changing super fast, right? They also knew their workaround and hacks, right? So this initially, of course, they will start with a simple one by using same or similar addresses, right? Which is very easy to catch as a product or engineering team, right? Then they start putting fictional addresses, where you now start bringing in maps technology, more complicated part, and trying to see whether this address even exists or not. What makes it even more complicated is in India, we do not have the concept of a structured address, right? You can pretty much, it's like a free text field where you can put in anything, right? And what it also means, what it also led to is that then once we tried to figure that out as well, then customers started putting a set of predetermined set of characters in the middle of their addresses, which the delivery person would know is a code for them to pick up the product and bring into a certain fraudulent location, right? And again, we started to use regular expression, regex, in trying to detect that as well. And then what they did, right? By the time it was in 6 months, the problem has matured to a state where they were adding names in the addresses which were of celebrities or cricketers, right? Which are the two main things in India, right? And and the delivery person would know that if this cricketer's name is there, right? Or if the name of a cricketer exists in the address somewhere in the middle, I need to pick up those products and bring to a certain location, right? So it's a code word that's being used through our platforms, which becomes more and more difficult to detect. Now how do you tell a machine learning algorithm then to start learning names of cricketers or databases from Wikipedia now? So the problem keeps on maturing. And if you start solving, right, for every problem in a very complex way, you will probably not be able to solve all of them at all. But there's some rules to doing this jugaad as well, and you'll think that's how all workarounds or hacks do not work, right? You never do a jugaad or a quick fix without an iteration, right? You do not put it in place and never look back at the product again. That doesn't work. You should also know that you have to iterate. You have to align. Your team or your management needs to know that you're putting in a fix that's that's sort of unconventional and might need to have a relook, and never do jugaad or quick fix or products, where there is a security issue or there is a regulatory or compliance issue. Now the next part, is that okay? Now my users are there. We have built a product, but how do I make my users adopt that product as well? Now, this is from not even last week. I think 2 days ago, the Uber CEO is in India. And he keeps talking about that Indians are very demanding, but they never pay anything. They're not willing to pay for the rides, right? And this has been the sentiment from Spotify as well. And I keep hearing Spotify complain, right? Because in India, the concept that comes down to is what we call as paisa vasool. Or basically, it means, it's a very simple way of saying value for money, right? Now, the concept of value can change from product to product. The concept of money can change from economy from culture to culture. But is the question that comes down to is that am I getting bang for my buck or not, right? As simple as that. At the end of the day, it comes down to the question of whether there is value for this product or not, right? And sometimes which ties to the question that what is that value that I need to provide? And I do not need to provide like a massive, super satisfactory value, blow the mind of my consumer every time. Sometimes, most of the times, providing a satisfying solution when you come within your customer's consideration set, when they start considering you to buy, is enough to get that purchase, right? And this also contrasts to a concept that you learn in marketing in lot, like what are products basically? This is not my short form. I think I've forgotten whom it comes from. But the concept is that it all ties down to a principle called CCD-VTP, which tells that every product that you create, it needs to do this. It needs to create, communicate, and deliver value to a target customer and do it with an intention of making a profit, right? Every product fails when one of the 6 is not satisfied, right? And if you can look back, every unsuccessful product in the market versus every successful product, this is where it comes down to. Sometimes you create and communicate the value, but you're not able to deliver it. Sometimes you're not able to understand what value is. Sometimes you're able to do all that CC, D, and V, but you get your target customer wrong. Or sometimes you do all of that right, but you never had the plan to go to a profit, right? Or a state where your product will start making sense. Right? It's only products that has a plan for CCD-VTP are products that actually survive in the long term, which is where FMCG companies have been such great markets where product management has actually taken up its field and then been adapted then into technical products. And product, of course, fails. When the customer fails, it's not good enough for their money. When all these 6 principles that I'm talking about, the CCD-VTP, is not being met by your product, that's when your product starts to fail. It's no longer a product that the customer needs, right? And then to the last part, what happens, if a product is not successful, right? As a product manager, what do you do? What do you take back as a learning from there, right? This is the last, concept in India. In India, we say chalta hai, like it's a shrug. It's basically a shrug, which basically says, yeah, life goes on, man. You're not going to get stuck because your product did not work, right? So it's basically about moving on. And this is what I also say is one of the more fallacies of being a product manager, right? You get too attached to your product. It's almost like raising a baby. You have looked into it, you have grown this over a certain stage. To see it fail can be extremely problematic, and it can be difficult, right? But you have to take it with a grain of salt. That's life. Products are going to fail, and products are going to expire as well, and it's about moving on from that stage, right? But not before. As a product manager, you've understood whether you had understood your customer's dhanda right in the first place or not, whether you did the right jugaad, the right hacks, the right workarounds or not, and whether you actually build a product that's paisa vasool, that's value for money or not. And that's it. That's from me. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around for the conference. Thanks.